Today on the Idiot's Guide, we have our fingers crossed today that this might be the last episode of Adulting Tips and Tricks. Let's hope for the best. And skydiving might be on some of our bucket lists. I'm sure it is. But breaking a world record while skydiving, well, that's even better. You just have to live long enough to see it. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka the Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. All right, so, I promised that, my fingers are definitely crossed, hoping that we can get through this. It feels like, I like the topics that we're going through, but then I get to these ones where I'm like, I feel like we've already talked to this. We're beating a dead horse. They're just a little different to where they're not quite that bad, but I'm like, there's too many things that just kind of blend together when you deal with that.
Well, but isn't repetition and beating a dead horse really the only way to teach young people? I'm kidding.
You say, like, I'm going to beat it into your thick skull. It's true. You're right. And honestly, like when you talk about, if you ever listen to this and you're like, man, that advertisement just wouldn't let up on how many times they said that phone number, there's a reason.
Oh, yeah. No, so to that, one thing I do is I help my clients with, kind of with their marketing and stuff like that. It's not what I do. I just track it with the financial information. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we look at attribution of when people are seeing the ads and things like that and how long it takes them to actually do it. And yeah, it is very true that it takes a long time for some people to decide that they will do something. And that's just buying something online, let alone, learning how to adult.
Yeah, a lot of these take a lot more of a lifestyle adjustment, I would say, or at least consideration about adding that into your life as a priority. And I think that, over the last little bit, we've done a pretty good job of modifying some of these to be a little more suitable for not necessarily the professional, but everyone, in a general sense. So, I'm done talking. We can carry on at this point. What I'm going to
as you can tell, I don't hold out hope to actually accomplish all 7 of these.
Oh, we're totally going to. Yes, right now. Number 14.
Here we go. Personal
hygiene. Develop a grooming routine that works for you. That, I know that we talked a little bit about this on one of the first episodes that we have.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that I'm an advocate for. I like making sure you don't smell like butt and feet all the time. And
could you imagine? So we're in a little tiny room here for our recording studio. Could you imagine if either one of us
was not
clean? It would be horrible.
There's not a lot of airflow in here, obviously, because the studio space doesn't allow for that. You can, but if you have the right mics, it's going to pick that airflow up.
Oh, yeah.
So luckily we have some really good mics, but they're not like super sensitive. They have some filters added to them. So we... Usually, that will get edited out.
Adam's got a bit of a cough right now, so we're giving him some leeway on this.
Hopefully that cough goes away sooner than later. It's been like a month and a half of that. Yeah. So it bugs me. But anyway, hygiene, man. Like I think the benefit of hygiene is just, I think you can make more friends that way.
You can. And honestly, as teenagers, there is no way to get away from the teenager foot.
It's true.
All teenagers have stinky teenager feet. It should be its own medical diagnosis But I don't care how much they clean their feet. I don't care how hygienic you are. So my wife's going to hate that I'm mentioning this, but my wife notoriously does not get dirty. There are jokes. Her parents talked about if she got muddy, a little bit of dirt on her, she would immediately have to go in and clean herself. And yet, as clean as she always was, I mean, everything always had to be clean. Even today, everything has to be clean. Nothing out on the counters. She, as a teenager, they would have her and her brothers would put bleach in the tub and they would soak their feet in bleach to get rid of the smell.
Oh, that's so bad for your feet.
Well,
for
it was
everything
diluted, but yeah. That was the solution back then. And so it doesn't matter how hygienic you are. Now, you should still clean your feet, of course, because it's a whole lot worse if you don't. But we're not talking to teenagers here when it comes to stinky feet. We know you have stinky feet, and parents everywhere, please stop being so hard on teenagers with their stinky feet.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. Keep them clean, but it's never going away. It won't go away until they're probably about 20.
Well, and encourage them to shower.
Oh, yeah, I'm just talking about the stinky feet.
But
just talking about stinky feet.
Like in the sense of adulting, I would probably say that, some things, if you still have stinky feet, maybe get some new socks, like there are some things. Check your shoes that you're wearing. Like, what are you doing for a job? I know that when I was working construction, if I had a pair of old shoes I was wearing, yep, I knew they were old shoes. As soon as my day was over, I was like, wow, those shoes are old. Yeah. They smell.
Yeah, and it's just teenagers that have the stinky feet. Once you pass, like I said, around that 20 years old mark, it'll go away. If you still have stinky feet after that, it's probably because you're not cleaning them.
Right.
And so, but that's the thing. I mean, how often do we get rankled by that foot stink as adults?
Yeah.
Imagine walking around with bad BO, with bad breath, with more rank feet, with body odor coming out of the groin area. It's just, you can't have that as an adult. Think about sitting in a boardroom.
I think about like bad breath came to mind. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, honestly, you're in conversation with people. If you're notoriously bad breath, like it's something to be mindful of, because not a lot of people are going to want to be around you if you just kind of fill the room full of something unpleasant, I guess,
Yeah.
And, or BO, like if you don't, I don't know. Some people may not notice it, but at the same time, like try to do something, try to do something healthy about that, because our bodies typically will produce that. Now, my wife is very much this way where maybe if she was running a marathon, she puts on deodorant. Besides that, she has no need for it.
Oh. I envy the people that don't have body odor, because there are people that are out there, and it's just because of body chemistry and different things. All bodies are different.
Yep.
That you either have to do more or less. I think we've talked about I'm an extremely sweaty person, so I have to put on more deodorant than the average person. Not any stronger, just more. Mm-hmm. The antiperspirant. I have to watch out because I sweat more in the groin region and. Things like that happens.
Yeah.
All bodies are different. I wish I had the body that didn't have body odor. But just don't assume you are that person that doesn't have body odor because you don't smell it on yourself, because you get used to your own smell.
Yeah.
And so it really is. When you're getting out into the world, it's one thing as a teenager, you stink, all teenagers stink. When you get out into the real world, now you're working with people who don't stink all the time.
Yep.
And you've got to step up to that level. You walk into a high school at all, and
I was going to say, just stop there.
Yeah. And there's a smell. The smell of high schools.
Yep.
But you don't have that in offices. And it doesn't matter what you do for a career, whether it's an office job, whether you're a mechanic, whether you're a YouTuber or what do they call podcasters? I guess that's what it is.
Podcaster.
The thing is, any one of these jobs, you're working around people. And if you don't have good hygiene, oh man, I would not want to be working with you.
Yeah, so I think the good rule of thumb in this one is just simply, don't assume, but take some of the basic steps of the things that will help with, if you're a male and grow facial hair, make sure you keep it trimmed and it's not just going crazy. There's a reason why I trim a hedge in my yard because sometimes it gets some squirrely hairs. Same thing applies on a person's face. And I don't want to assume a male, but that's typically the case, okay? At the same time, brush your teeth, wear deodorant. They're just kind of common things. If you want, you can, or you don't have any sensitivity to it, you could wear a kind of cologne to something. Just don't go crazy with it because, again, it's the balance, but don't just give up and not do anything because everyone's going to know that.
Yeah.
So,
and, just recognize it's not just you. Everybody stinks.
Yep.
Even people who have no body odor still have to brush their teeth because their breath will stink if they don't.
Yep.
Everyone has that. And when you become a parent, or if you are a parent, do not go so hard on your teenagers that they rebel against hygiene. And that happens when parents are so strict about hygiene that they go overboard with the hygiene, like soaking your feet in bleach or other things that I won't tell you about that border on the abusive. It tends to lead them away from proper hygiene because they rebel against those ideas.
Yeah.
And so that's just as important, and recognize all teenagers stink and they will grow out of it once they become adults.
Yes. All right. So number 15 is time for fun. Don't forget to make time for hobbies and relaxation.
This is a really important one.
Absolutely.
I do a vacation once a year, and I can tell when I don't. I should do vacations more than once a year, but that just ends up being our one big one a year. This last year, we went to San Diego. The year before, we went to Myrtle Beach. We try to have fun. We try to build these memories. We try to take time off.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, if you're not taking time to relax, your stress levels are just going to skyrocket.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, you don't have to necessarily leave for that to take place. You can find things nearby in your neighborhood or go to a park, get some fresh air, get some vitamin D under the sun. And I think, the point of this is do something you love, if that's knitting, if that's building models, if that's playing an instrument, if that's writing poetry, if that, whatever it is, playing a sport. All of those things are things that are going to, they're not necessarily tied to this big thing we have in our life called responsibilities. It gives us a chance to let loose and kind of get away from that and do something that we really truly enjoy for a moment. Don't just live in that, though. I mean, everybody would love to, but that's the thing is, making time for fun is super crucial every single day.
Yeah. And there's some science behind this. Maybe we'll go into this on another podcast episode, but when we talk about, serotonin, dopamine, we talk about neuroreceptors, we talk about, there's a lot of science, a lot of biological science that goes into what keeps us healthy and what keeps us going. And if we don't have enough activities that produce serotonin and dopamine for us, we're going to run into problems. Mm-hmm. That is people who have clinical depression. Generally, it's because their body either doesn't produce enough serotonin or it is metabolizing the serotonin too quickly. And so clinically, I mean, metabolically, they just don't have enough of those chemicals. And so we have medications, the antidepressants, that help to allow the body to produce more of those. And so that's medical-based depression, which again, we should recognize it's just a medical issue. It's not because someone's got anything wrong with them. It's just their body's not producing. It's just like my body produces BO and other bodies don't. But in our lives, if we're not doing enough activities that are producing serotonin, producing dopamine to our system, then we can have similar symptoms to depression.
Yeah.
Where we're just not happy, where we feel drained. And so doing those fun activities, those things that actually produce those chemicals in our body, help us to stay happy, help us to stay good.
Yep.
And it's really important. I mean, we see the problems with clinical depression when people don't have access to medications. Why would we be trying to do that to ourselves when our bodies are producing the right levels? And so that's from a scientific standpoint. Again, we can maybe go over this longer in another podcast, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of science behind why it's good to do fun things.
I think the main point is just, give yourself that time and try to make it something that you can practice daily. I mean, if it's meeting for a group like doing a basketball team, that might not be able to be possible for an everyday thing. But what's a little thing that brings joy? So think about, a chapter in a book, or, sitting on a back patio having your favorite tea or coffee or whatever it is. Just having a moment where you just get to take in a deep breath and enjoy that moment rather than being surrounded by the whirlwind of our normal responsibilities. And so that's the encouragement, is just make sure you put that time in.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 16, problem solving. Develop problem solving skills to handle life's challenges. I don't want to answer this one. Honestly, hey guys, if I was to be as I can't use the word transparent because that wouldn't be fair, but to allude to it, I'm the kind of person right now where if somebody asks me how I'm doing, I say I'm fine, but they see the glow of the fire behind me. That's typically my life. And there's a lot of people and things in place to help me as I'm navigating this thing that's on fire. But yeah, I mean, problem solving I can attest, is an essential ingredient to what you need to do and how you handle things. Prior service military, I have PTSD, and I've gone through their problem solving course called cognitive processing therapy. And that's cool. Believe me, I would probably revisit it and just kind of go, okay, I need to be reminded of these things. Ultimately, it provided me with a toolbox. However, it's a toolbox for like after action report kind of stuff. Because when the building's on fire, you're not digging into your toolbox going, okay, well, let's figure out what a thought distortion is. Let's talk about the truth in this. What are some of the lies that our head is telling us? And those are all important for problem solving. However, it's difficult in the moment. Me specifically as a veteran, I go from, I start at 60, so I don't even need to go anywhere when it's 0 to 60. I'm already there. So if something goes awry, I bump it up to 80 or 100 and just get it done.
Yeah, and critical thinking, problem solving is, if you don't have that skill as an adult, you're going to run into a lot of problems because you're not going to be handed everything on a silver spoon or on a silver platter. You've got to think through the process. You've got to see a problem, work through 5 different solutions, and then make a decision on which is best. And it's not a skill that a lot of people have. Now, my parents took a very non-traditional viewpoint when I was a kid. And they encouraged me and my siblings to play video games. And not just any video games. They didn't allow a lot of video games in the house. The games that they allowed us to play and encouraged us to play were things like role-playing games. The games we played, Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior.
Yeah.
We had some like Sesame Street games. We had some other games. These were all Sesame Street, obviously, for when we were much younger.
Sure.
But all of the ideas behind these games and the reasons why they encouraged us to play them was because you were presented with a challenge and then you had to figure out what to do next. It wasn't like Fortnite where you're just running around and dancing. It was you were given a problem. You had to go somewhere to do something. And that's as much as you knew. And you had to go and talk to everyone in that village to figure out the different pieces of how to get to where you needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so you had to not only figure out what the next step was, you had to figure out what the pieces that were given to you, how they fit into that solution. And that's critical thinking. That's problem solving.
Yep.
And I really like that my parents did that when we were young, because it developed in us this ability to think critically, to problem solve, to look at the world around us and analyze what was going on and ask multiple points of view in order to come to the correct conclusion or the best conclusion. In the game, there's a best conclusion. In the real world, or in the game, there's a correct solution. In the real world, there's only the best solution. There's no one correct thing always. It's just what's best.
I think what's interesting is I almost have this contrast between, I don't necessarily remember problem solving skills being something that my parents, in my upbringing were, focused on in any way. I had challenges and things like that came up in my life, but I don't think it was necessarily anything that was that sounds really cool to just like have some of those problem solving things in a sort of interactive environment that's safe.
Mm-hmm.
I think about it in the sense that I probably get my problem solving from the military, which isn't a good place to get problem solving because it's like, literally like I sum it up in 3 words. I fight things. That's it. That is it. You're trained not to necessarily solve a problem by gathering enough data to find the best possible conclusion. It is unsafe or safe.
Yeah.
That is it. And so, however means you get there, you're not gathering data. You're just you're eliminating possibilities is all you're doing. And that's not necessarily the best approach in life.
Well, I kind of disagree. So, and I can see where you're coming from, but from a cognitive standpoint, what you're doing is you are looking at all of the possible solutions to a problem, and then you are picking the one that provides the best survivability to the highest number of people. And that's a hard thing because in military action, in any kind of combat zone, anything to do with the military, you're inevitably going to have to risk losing someone's life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is you save as many lives as possible. And that's very different from the civilian world where I'm deciding, do I buy corn or peas for dinner? Which ones do my kids like best? I'm not surviving combat. I'm surviving the end of night argument.
Right.
And so it's the same skills. It's the same ideas of problem solving, of skills. It's just yours is very survival based. And it is very much about resolving to a conclusion. And that involves, like you said, we fight.
Yes.
That's that environment. And that's very much what you have to do as a military person. In the civilian world, and we've talked about this, difference between civilian and military life. In the civilian world, it's very different. Same skills, same ideas. It's just at the end, you're dealing with much less life or death situations. Whereas a veteran, when they come home, every situation can be life and death.
Right.
You know, picking peas or corn in the veteran brain is potentially life or death. Not because it actually is, but because that's your problem solving skills.
Well, I mean, you go from this and you go, if I don't decide that, then I won't have peas or corn for dinner ready for my family. So my family will starve. And then I've let everybody down because of what a terrible failure I was in that. It's not a safe place for people.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, guys, like this is completely dismantling one thought pattern while I'm standing there picking peas or corn. So, or carrots or whatever you want to call it. Like it's literally like that. That was a snapshot. You're welcome.
And the idea is the earlier you develop these critical thinking skills, these problem solving skills, the much better you will be later in life. Yeah. And so these are vital. I mean, we're talking about peas and corn or peas and carrots for dinner. That's problem solving. If you can't properly problem solve to pick between peas and carrots, then you really are not going to do well as an adult.
Well, and right now,
you need to work on that.
With my daughter, we're working on that. So a lot of it's like, when she has two pairs of shoes that she wants to wear both of them, one has a thicker sole than the other one. So if she tries to wear them both, they're lopsided and she walks funny all day. And she's like, no, this was the worst idea ever. But that's just the example. But it's one of those where you're like, okay, well, let's figure this out for the day. What would happen if you wore both of them, And she'd be like, well, I'd walk funny. Okay. Well, if you walked funny all day, how do you think you'd feel? I don't think I'd feel very good. I'd be achy. Okay. So maybe it's better to pick which one and maybe pick another day for the other pair, And so kind of coaching and guiding, which ones do you think would go with your outfit today? And she picked these and, so we still give her all the selection option at that point, but just to kind of unpack it and look at it from that perspective and go, yeah, I mean, rather than her coming out wearing two different pairs of shoes and we're going to the mall, it's like, oh man, I don't want this to hurt later. So sweetie, I'm going to help you with that. And that's developing problem solving.
Yeah. And as a parent, if you don't have problem solving skills, you're not going to be able to teach your kids.
Yes. So this one's kind of really on the same heels of that. Actually, the next couple are pretty close in that sense. But number 17 is learning, continuing to educate yourself through books, courses, and workshops. I took a Strengths Finder quiz, one of those life things where they're like, this is the definitive proof of who you are and your exact identity. We guarantee it. Here are 80,000 charts to verify our verification. And you're just like, oh, okay, neat. Can I just get my top 5? Well, that one's the free one. That's exactly what I want. So I got my top 5. I can't remember if it's number 1 or number 2 is learner, which means that I just like information. It doesn't have to be useful. It can be completely useless. It gives me that to me is water cooler or standing around having a beer with my buddies and I just dropped this worthless nugget in that conversation, And they're like, I could have done my whole life without knowing anything about that. And King Tut from the so it's fun, but I really, really thrive if I mean, even now I'm in a constant state of learning. I've got 4 or 5 different things I'm trying to learn all at the same time. So
yeah, learning is a lifelong activity. It's, you can't just let it run you by. This is something that is very hard. And I don't know if this is just my kids because of their background, or if it's all kids today. But they don't really want to learn. Yeah. They don't. I mean, we've got resources just innumerable. It used to be you'd have to pull out the Encyclopedia Britannica in order to look up any piece of information. And usually, if you did that, you were at least 10 years behind the times of what is actually going on today. Because it takes that long to research, write a article, compile all these articles into an encyclopedia, and then to sell it. It's not feasible to be able to update that on a regular basis.
Yep.
Whereas today, we've got the internet.
Yep.
I mean, Wikipedia is one of my favorite websites ever. I know everyone poo-poos on Wikipedia, but honestly, there is really no difference between Encyclopedia Britannica and Wikipedia.
Except it's updated real time.
Yeah, exactly. No, and Wikipedia is updated real time, but you have real experts in the field. You have real experts that are reviewing the articles.
Right.
And then you have it presented to you just the same as back then. You do not realize. So we've got an old, I think it was a 1960s Encyclopedia Britannica. I don't think it's Britannica. It's an encyclopedia. Okay. And anytime we want to laugh about history, we pull out this encyclopedia. And because it's only 60 years out of date. So 60 years doesn't seem like that long a time. But it is, not only was the information in there wrong to begin with, but there are a lot of sentiments about that time frame that were just wrong in any point of view. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of the information, we have new scientific discoveries, new things like that make new knowledge more correct. But it's the idea that these guys were the experts. I was going to say these guys and ladies, but if you look at the contributors, most of them were men. Because this was the 1960s. But a lot of times they just put wrong information in there.
Yeah.
And there was no one correcting them because they were the quote unquote experts of their day. Today, with something like Wikipedia, they have it regularly reviewed. They have citations for everything. I love Wikipedia.
I like it because of the citations. Because if I want to further verify what that information is that I'm getting, I can go in the different directions that they're citing in order to determine whether or not they're accurate in what they're saying.
Yeah, and you're getting more information. I mean, the encyclopedia or Wikipedia. Now, I also donate every year to Wikipedia. I am a supporter of the Wikimedia Foundation.
Yeah.
I think it's a great resource for us. I used to, during my lunches, you can pick random article, and I would just read random articles.
Ooh, that's really exciting.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
You're tickling my learner.
And then you go to the links for their references, and you're getting a ton more information from the original sources, from the original authors. And so you can get countering opinions on a scientific viewpoint because both of those points of view are stated in Wikipedia. But even not Wikipedia, we have access to news sources. We have access to just unlimited information today to be able to gather anything and everything. And this is what I do. I mean, I love learning. But kids today, I don't know if this is just my kids or if this is all kids in general, kids being anyone under the age of about 20. But I try to tell them something and they're really interested when I talk to them about it. They say they can't go through a meal without having a science lesson. So, but I tell them, well, why don't you go and learn about it yourself? Why don't you go here and start learning the information? And they never do.
Yeah.
And again, when we were kids of the computer age, when I was in high school, we had computers. Wikipedia was just starting.
Yeah.
All these news articles. And I just loved getting all that information and I just absorbed everything.
I'm a fan of obviously learning, but also the fact that just letting you guys know. I mean, we have a source in our hands every day. You can look up that information, and maybe you don't have that. Like, I'll say this: if you have a computer or access to a computer, which is pretty much anyone, you can go to a public library and do this. but a Google search will give you access to that information much more than an encyclopedia is going to give you.
Oh yeah.
Now, whether or not that information is accurate is a different story. But where I go with this is like I have a Google enabled house, and so we have big stations, Max stations with screens on them in different parts of our house. And my daughter likes to go up and ask for what the animal of the day is. There's always an animal. And it'll tell you the animal, it'll make the noise, it'll tell you a little bit of information about it, and it's so cool because then she'll come around and she'll talk about it. Like she's like, "No, I just learned this and I learned this," and I'm like, I can access that from my watch. My watch will reply that back to me and read that little snippet, make the little animal noise. My watch has that capability, guys. This is at our fingertips all the time at this point. There's really no excuse for just stop learning because really, no matter what, you're being inundated by it. Whether you're watching something and being influenced by someone's, mission or, whatever their opinion is on a TV show or versus, how to bake a cake from so-and-so,
Yeah. It's just always seek to learn. The resources are there. Take your lunch break. Take 10 minutes and read a random article online, whether it's Wikipedia or whether it's whatever it is. Go out there and look up an article, read something for just 10 minutes a day, and you will learn so much and you'll be much better prepared for conversations in the future.
Yeah. All right. So number 18, we're pressing the clock at this point.
I'll try to go quick with these.
We're real close. Goal setting. Set realistic goals for your career, personal life, and finances.
I think everyone knows the importance of goal setting.
Yes.
The only thing I really want to add to this is whenever you set a goal, make it an I will statement.
Yeah.
And so it's not I'll try or I can or if or I'll do this maybe. Make sure it's an I will. And when it's an I will statement, put a deadline on it. I will do something by this day and time.
Yeah.
That's how you set goals, and that's how you accomplish the goals. And never feel negative about not accomplishing the goal. The goal was there to push you. Keep working on the goal and accomplish it. It just may be a little bit later than you originally anticipated. That's why you always put a date on it, because you're saying, I will by this date do that goal. Well, if you don't accomplish it by that date, okay, move the date a little bit further forward. You're still working to accomplish that goal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a negative. It's always a positive. So long as you are working towards accomplishing that goal.
I think that, I don't do a very good job of setting goals. One of the things that I keep in front of me is about goals that I keep at my desk. It's behind me on a little plaque that you can change all the letters for. And it says, don't focus on the princess, or no, so don't focus on the pits.
Focus on the princess.
Focus on the princess. And it's a philosophy that Mark Rober was part of the study for. So I can't remember his channel, but anyway, he's a YouTuber. And my kids love him. And I've seen lots of his stuff. He's great. But he did a TED Talk about this. Mm-hmm. And it's I think they called it the Mario effect or something.
Yep. And
really what it was is they saw these gamers that they're playing Super Mario Brothers, and they're just dying, falling in the hole. Yet they'd start over. They'd frantically try to just keep scrambling. They're like, okay, I didn't jump at the right exact moment, so I landed. Okay, I missed it right there. Oh, I ran too fast. Oh, you're like a thousand reasons why they kept falling in the hole, but they kept falling in the hole. So it was about the fact that they showed back up again, and they'd show back up again, and they'd show back up again. And the whole purpose is that the game is designed for you to focus on the princess, the goal, rather than the pits. And oftentimes in our life, most humans, most adults, most anybody, when they set a goal and this goes to your point earlier. Don't get down on yourself. They'll set a goal, but they won't reach that goal, or something will fall apart about that, and they never get there. And then all of a sudden, they're getting mad at themselves, or they're saying, "Hey, or they just stop trying, and they go, I'm not going to set another goal." They get afraid of the failure of falling in the pits, and the pits are there. They're inevitable. And blah, 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 inevitable. I don't even know what the word I just said was.
It's a good thing you're not Thanos.
Joe's eyes just went like, what? But it's that idea that, putting something in front of you that is attainable is something that you can realistically get to, and just even if it's a big one, break it into a smaller victory. If you have to do it daily, I'm going to do this, and this. Mm-hmm. And that will add to this week of this, and this. And then that will add to the month of this, and this, and so on and so forth, for however long you need that to be. But it's the point of it saying, like, it's really, really important for you to start with a goal and chip away at that as you go along.
Yeah. Having those mini goals within that goal. So you're setting a goal for accomplishing something. You have, it's almost like an outline. So you have your main goal, but then you have chapter 1. And then these are the steps that you need to accomplish in order to finish chapter 1 of your goal. And you have chapter 2, and then you have 10 steps under chapter 2 of how to accomplish chapter 2, which helps you to accomplish your end goal. And these could be daily, monthly, weekly, whatever you're doing to accomplish these. And that's how you accomplish goals, because each one of these little steps adds to the big. We've talked about it a lot when it comes to the science of how the brain recognizes motor function and different things like that, just because of some of the side projects that we have. But when we think about walk, so the word walk, everyone knows what that generally means. You go from point A to point B. But what most of us don't realize is all of the minor things that go into walking. So it is making sure all of the different muscle groups are in play. You've got to make sure that your back is aligned a certain way at different points within the step of the walk so that you actually stay upright. Yeah. Making sure your feet are a certain distance away from each other laterally. Making sure that everything is aligned along the entire way. Walking would be the goal. The little steps are all of the little movements that go in to make walking possible. Mm-hmm. And so we've got to realize that even setting a major goal, even setting a minor goal, there are steps to accomplishing that goal.
Yep. And if you don't have any goals, I'm a little convicted by this one, because for me right now, I feel like I've got a lot of things going on. Goals would probably be helpful, but I've got a lot of things going on so much that I forget to set these goals. And it makes it difficult to stay focused on, something.
Yeah. And again, guys, we're not preaching as the experts here. We're the idiots too.
Absolutely.
This is the idiots leading the idiots. We just know these things are good things. Doesn't mean we're perfect at them.
That's true.
We're
try to be.
And
most days, like 80% of the days,
yeah,
I'm perfect. It's fine.
And some days are better than others. Humility notwithstanding. But
okay.
yeah.
Do you want?
No, I was just going to say that's the idea. Is just work toward it.
Yes, and stay focused on it, and don't kick yourself if you don't quite get there. Keep pushing, keep going forward. The number 19. This is we're almost done with these. 2 more.
All right.
Emergency funds. Save for unexpected expenses and emergencies. Honestly, I don't have to explain that any more than that. Guys, save.
emergencies happen. You get in car accidents, you have a fence fall down, your toilet blows up, your garage door breaks. These are just the things that have happened to me in the last few years.
I was just going to say, I was like, that was last week, the week before. Was, yeah. So I know. Okay.
And they all cost money.
Yep.
It happens.
They always say you're like, oh, you need at least 6 months of living expenses and that. In an ideal world, I'm sure of it. In a different economy, I'm sure of it. But if it means something that just in case, I remember I used to do. I worked on the sales floor, and I kept it was $250 in my wallet. I didn't use it; it just stayed there. And the reason why I say this is it's one of those things where I had a savings account and all that kind of stuff, but I kept this in my wallet for this demeanor about, if something were to happen, I had the ability to pay for it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of provided some level of relief to some of the stress that we normally deal with. I can't work more 9 to 5s in order to get more money. I've always worked in sales, and so I know how to make more money. It's just a matter of setting the goals so I can. But it's it's saving on the side of that, to know that in those times where in my sales world it's a dry spell, I'm not going to just lose everything because of the fact that I wasn't prepared. And so it's super duper important to have at least something back there to hold on to.
Yeah. And as you're building it, this is the advice that I always give to people. And these are people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to people making hundreds of dollars, a week. The idea is set aside a small amount. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be a lot. If you're making $200 a week, set aside $10. That $10 that you're setting aside every week, you can do that on $200. And over an entire year, that's going to become $520. $520 just by setting aside $10 a week. If you tried to take at $200 a week, $520 to set aside, you're not going to be able to do it. But setting aside $10, that's relatively easy.
Think about it as a cup of coffee or a lunch.
Yeah. Take that $10, you just set it aside, and that's your emergency fund. And eventually it will get to the point where, in this example, that's 2.5 weeks salary. Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. Do it for another 2 years. You've got 5 weeks of salary. That's a month. That's over a month.
Yep.
Of your salary. And so now you've got that covered just after 2 years. Do that for a few more years, and you've got your 3 months savings by just setting aside $10 a week.
Yeah.
If you're making more than that, let's say you're making $1,000 a week, and you've got a relatively good job at $1,000 a week, maybe put aside $100 a week and put that money aside, maybe $50 a week. And what you're doing is you're just taking a small portion of that nut and just putting it away. You will get there eventually. This kind of goes into those small baby steps of how you get there. But you're not going to have it today. And a lot of people get discouraged by, well, I don't have it all in there today. That's okay. Mm-hmm. You will work toward it. The earlier you do it, the better it is. Yeah. If you're 50 years old, trying to just start your emergency fund, it's going to be a lot harder than when you're 20 years old and starting your emergency fund, even if it's $10. And so that's where you're going to help to build that. Just take a small amount every week and set it aside, because it's a whole lot easier. I mean, if you were to imagine $200 a week and you just do this monthly, that's $40. $40 is a big chunk of $200 for once a month to set money aside on 1 week. But if you're doing it every week, it's easier.
Yep.
And this is what I tell people when I tell them how to save for taxes, when I tell them how to set up emergency funds, saving for investments, any of these kinds of things. Just take a small amount today and set it aside. Because if you've got a again, I deal with some high value people. If you've got a $70,000 tax bill come April, that's a huge amount of money, even if you do make a lot of money. But if you're setting aside $1,000 a week for an entire year, $1,000 a week at that income level, okay, that's doable. And then you're not pulling $70,000 out of your account. You already have it set aside for taxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the small amount of money makes a big difference. Small amount every week helps you to get there.
So the last one, I think if you've been listening so far for the last few episodes, to our one listener that's out there, thank you. This one's really the best. Number 20 is seek advice.
Yes, that's us, right?
Don't be afraid to ask for help or advice from experienced adults when you need it. Honestly, most people, they're just a little further down the road than you might be. And so they may have experienced something that you are experiencing. And it's okay. It's a great thing for interaction when you ask for that help, ask for that advice. And if somebody is a jerk and just says, whatever, get out of here, that's not a very smart person.
And they're not going to give you good advice anyway.
You don't want the advice from them anyway. But most people are willing to say, like, hey, just like we want to impart wisdom to our next generation, it's the same. We're looking out for each other. We want to help each other, whether that's, help for changing a tire, doing your budgeting, saving the amount of money, setting goals, making sure you prioritize your time, networking and making friends. All of that stuff really, really matters. But most importantly is you're not by yourself doing all of it.
Yeah. And that's the whole point of the Idiot's Guide, is because there are a lot of people who just don't know where to go.
Yep.
Who do I ask? Who do I go to? That maybe they don't have parents that are involved. Maybe they have parents who aren't very capable. Maybe they don't have resources of good mentors or anything like that. They just don't have the resources to ask. So the whole point of this podcast is to give that advice. Now, eventually, once we get to more than one listener, so listener, please spread this out as much as possible so that eventually we get to this point. We want to be able to actually talk to people on the podcast. We want to do the Patreon stuff where we're actually bringing people into the calls, giving advice, having these, like Zoom things for Patreons and things like that. That's where we want to eventually get to. Obviously, with one listener, it's much harder to try to do that.
It's not even a hill yet.
Yeah, it's barely on the horizon. But that's the idea with all of this. Find a mentor. Find someone to ask. I had a mentor. He was great. He had a finance degree. He was a real estate professional. He taught me a ton about being confident, about being independent, about how to ask questions. And it really changed my entire financial life, my entire business life.
Yeah.
To have a mentor like that. And it really does create a lot of value to have someone that you can ask questions to. And so find someone, whoever that may be. If it's listening to our podcast, great, we'll take it. If it's finding someone out there that has that resource, there are mentorship programs out there. There are a lot of resources for people to find. Go and find someone, because it's a hard world. Adulting is not. We just spent how many podcast episodes on adulting?
I think this one's 4.
Including all of the other ones that we've done on adulting.
Yeah, I mean, we're like 20,
this series
episodes,
is just 4.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy task. And so finding someone that can help you along that road is vital to survival.
Yeah. Well, I think that I'm going to mirror that same encouragement, just being that I would even add, to the sake of when you're seeking advice, sometimes it's professionally, Sometimes it's relationally. Sometimes it's spiritually. And that might not always be the same person. There might be individuals who are going to fulfill that. But the most important thing is that you seek that advice. That, if somebody has to walk up to you and be like, can I teach you? I have news for you. That's never going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and honestly, like the other side of this is I've done mentorships. I've done coaching for years and years now. And the one thing that I watch out for is when I can't teach somebody. If they come across to me when I'm giving them, a morsel of advice, and they shut it down, that in my perspective is called unteachable. And if you're unteachable in every aspect of your life, you are going to face a lot of challenges because you aren't asking for advice. You know it all. And we let you cross the street without looking. That's typically what happens. I have to give that example because that's how I teach my kids. Is the reason why I say your name and I need you to look at me is because of that moment when you're crossing the street and you may not know that there's a big car coming down the road. I want you to recognize that that is my name that's keeping you safe. And that goes all the way out to when I give somebody advice, when you say, I'm going to do my own thing. Okay, I'm going to let you do that. Go do your own thing. Yeah. Don't ask me because I won't be your advisor. But if you want to take that advice and move with it, then I hope that leads to a successful path. I can't guarantee it because we just all can't. However, I want to be there along the way to see if there are things that I may have experienced that I can impart on you. So,
yeah. And if you find someone that isn't necessarily giving you the advice that you like or want because you got different viewpoints, whatever, find another mentor.
Ask for a refund.
Well, there's so many people out there. There's so many resources out there. And there are people that share your viewpoints.
Yep.
Adam and I don't share the same viewpoints on quite a few things.
Yeah. We don't even get along normally.
But the idea is you want to find someone that you will listen to.
Yeah.
And if you don't get along, personalities, whatever viewpoints, don't give up. Just find someone else. They're out there. Unless they're skydiving, right?
Yeah, unless
I did the transition that time.
Not out there. So our subtopic for the day is really fantastic. So yes, this involves skydiving. And yes, a lot of us have that on our bucket list. But the breaking the world record part while skydiving is pretty impressive. The reason why is because this world record was a 104-year-old woman was seeking. Obviously, she is the carrier of the Guinness Book of World Records for the oldest person to ever skydive. Well, they had to adjust it because she didn't make it to see it actually recorded in the Guinness Book of World Records, and they ended up it's now the oldest woman to ever jump out of a moving airplane, basically. So I'm not really sure why that ended up being changed, but so her name is Dorothy Hoffner, and where's she at? I can't. Oh, so like near Ottawa, Illinois, like skydiving in Chicago area, and she jumps out of the plane, has the time of her life, just living life to the fullest. Obviously, making time for fun. I would absolutely do this. 104 years old and thinking like there are probably tons of things that that she could have done. So this was Sunday, October 1st. Monday, October 2nd, she fell asleep and didn't wake up again.
She didn't need to. She accomplished everything. She was done.
She holds the record for the the oldest person to ever jump out at a height of 13,500 feet. So it's impressive, like being, the late holder of that at this point, but still very, very, very cool. I wish that she was my grandma, because that's an awesome lady right there.
Speaking about, mentors advice, could you imagine the advice that you could have gotten from her while she was alive? I mean, a lady who had the guts to go and jump out of a plane at 104 years old. One of my new favorite people.
Most people, like, you get to 80 and that's kind of where you're like, okay, everything from here is just really quickly downhill. So I don't want to speed it up by jumping downhill at 13,000 feet, like.
I just, that kind of ambition, that kind of living life to its fullest. One of my favorite movies is, now I can't think of the name of the movie. Robin Williams, Carpe Diem.
Patch Adams.
No, not Patch Adams.
What? That's the one where she's like, oodles of noodles.
No, that was okay.
He was like fulfilling like that.
Dead Poets Society.
Dead Poets Society.
I can't believe I forgot the name of
that one's a good one.
movie. Dead Poets Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain. Carpe Diem. Everything that she stood for, at 104 years old, just being willing to just live life.
Yeah. I have to say, like, what's interesting is she beat the record. The record before was 103 from somebody in 2022 from Sweden. So they jumped, I'm assuming the same or a similar height, obviously, but that's crazy. Like, and what's interesting about it is it wasn't her first time. So she's been jumping out of planes since she was 100 years old.
Oh, God. So I thought you were going to say since she was like 40. No, since she was 100 years old, she's been jumping out of planes.
Just imagine, like, being that person that's like, so what hobby did you want? Okay, can you... I have a really big, thick disclaimer book I need you to sign. I do not want any liability in this. It feels like this is a bad idea, but what a cool lady. Like, unbelievable. Man. I'm going to read this snippet at the end of the list, generated by AI, but it sounds like a really good ending. We're at the end of our show. So remember, nobody becomes a perfect adult overnight. Nobody becomes a perfect adult. I promise you, you never get there. And it's okay to make mistakes along the way. Adulting is a continuous learning process, and you'll grow and adapt as you gain experience. So embrace the journey. Keep your sense of humor, and don't be too hard on yourself. And remember, idiots have way more fun. Check your shoes.